The night I heard my granddaughter whisper, "He'll never stop," my heart cracked into 1,000 pieces. I never thought I'd live long enough to see the person I trusted most betray her in the worst way imaginable. The sound of those 3 words still echoes through my apartment on Roosevelt Avenue, bouncing off these thin walls like a prayer no one should ever have to hear. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if for even a second this feels familiar, I only ask that you like this video and subscribe. It will help me keep opening my heart. My name is Dorothy, and I'm 73 years old. My hands shake when I pour my morning coffee, not from age, but from the weight of what I've carried. These fingers have wiped tears, counted dollars until my vision blurred, and held secrets that should have burned my tongue. But they have also dialed 911, signed legal papers, and finally learned to say no. Every morning at 5:30, before the city truly wakes, I stand in my cramped kitchen in Queens. The linoleum floor is worn thin from decades of my pacing, and the coffee maker gurgles like an old friend clearing his throat. Through the window, I watch the first buses rumble down Northern Boulevard, carrying people to jobs that barely pay enough to survive in this expensive city. I know because I was one of them until 3 months ago. The apartment smells like yesterday's dinner and the faint trace of my late husband's cologne, still lingering on his old sweater that I refuse to wash. 3 bedrooms, if you can call the converted den a bedroom. That's where I sleep now. My daughter Jennifer and my 11-year-old granddaughter Emma have the real bedrooms. I gave them up 2 years ago when they moved in, telling myself it was temporary. Nothing in this family has ever been temporary, except the moments when we were truly happy. I remember standing in that kitchen last Tuesday morning, my arthritis making every movement deliberate and painful, preparing Emma's lunch for school. White bread because the good bread costs too much. Peanut butter because protein is expensive. An apple I'd bought 3 days ago and had been saving. As I folded the brown paper bag, I heard that whisper from down the hall. "He'll never stop." 3 words that changed everything. Emma's voice was so small, so defeated, like a bird with broken wings trying to convince itself it could still fly. I set down the lunch bag and pressed my ear to the wall. Silence. Then footsteps. Heavy ones that didn't belong to my daughter or granddaughter. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. You see, for the past 18 months, Jennifer's boyfriend Marcus had been staying over more and more frequently. First it was weekends. Then it was weekdays. Then suddenly he had his own key, his own drawer in my dresser, his own opinion about how I should spend my Social Security check. Funny how that works, isn't it? How people slide into your life and suddenly they're making decisions about your money, your space, your family. "Mom, Marcus needs to stay here for a while," Jennifer had said, not asked, last spring. "He's between apartments and looking for work." Between apartments and looking for work. In New York City, that could mean anything from temporarily homeless to actively avoiding child support payments. I should have asked more questions. I should have said no. But Jennifer had that look in her eyes, the same desperate look she'd had when she was 16 and pregnant with Emma, pleading with me not to kick her out. So I said yes. I always said yes. Marcus was 42 years old with soft hands that had never seen real work, and eyes that wandered where they shouldn't. He had this way of talking to Emma that made my skin crawl, calling her princess and sweetheart in a voice too smooth, too practiced. When I mentioned it to Jennifer, she laughed it off. "Mom, you're being paranoid. He's just being nice to her. You should be grateful Emma has a father figure." Father figure. The words tasted like metal in my mouth. That Tuesday morning, after Emma left for school with her paper bag lunch and her small backpack that I'd bought at the dollar store, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the crack in the linoleum. The crack that started small, just a tiny line near the refrigerator, but had grown over time into a jagged scar that ran almost to the door, just like the doubt in my heart. I pulled out the old shoebox where I kept our important papers and found the receipt from Emma's last doctor's visit, the one where she'd complained of stomach aches, the one where the young doctor had asked if everything was okay at home, and Emma had gone silent, staring at her hands folded in her lap like she was praying. That evening, I made my decision. I went to the electronics store on Queens Boulevard, the one with the flickering neon sign and the patient man behind the counter who didn't make me feel stupid for not understanding technology. I spent $200 I didn't have on a small camera. $200 from my grocery money. Money that should have gone toward the electric bill that was already 3 weeks overdue. "It's for security," I told the clerk, and it wasn't entirely a lie. I installed it Wednesday night while everyone was asleep, hiding it behind Emma's bookshelf between her worn copy of Charlotte's Web and a photo of us at Coney Island from last summer. In that photo, we're both smiling, both innocent of what was coming. Emma is holding cotton candy bigger than her head, and I'm wearing the yellow sundress that Jennifer always said made me look younger. We look like a normal grandmother and granddaughter spending a normal day by the ocean. We look happy. Thursday passed without incident. I watched the footage on my old laptop, squinting at the small screen, fast-forwarding through hours of Emma doing homework, reading, sleeping peacefully in her twin bed with the pink comforter I'd sewn myself 3 Christmases ago. Nothing happened. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was the paranoid old woman Jennifer said I was. But Friday night changed everything. At 11:47 p.m., I watched Marcus enter Emma's room with a key. His key. The key to my apartment that Jennifer had given him without asking me. I watched him close the door softly behind him. I watched my granddaughter's eyes open in the darkness, wide with fear and resignation. I watched her small body tense under her covers, and I heard her whisper those 3 words that will haunt me until the day I die. He'll never stop. I want to tell you that I burst through that door like some action hero from the movies. I want to tell you that I grabbed a baseball bat and chased him out of my home, out of our lives. But the truth is, I sat there in my converted den bedroom, shaking like a leaf in a hurricane, watching my laptop screen and feeling every one of my 73 years pressing down on my shoulders like concrete blocks. I was terrified. Terrified of confrontation. Terrified of being wrong. Terrified of tearing apart what was left of my family. Terrified of being alone. You have to understand, by this time in my life, Jennifer and Emma were all I had left. My husband George died 4 years ago from lung cancer, leaving behind hospital bills that ate through our modest savings like termites through wood. My son Michael lives in California with his new wife, who doesn't approve of family complications, meaning me. My sister passed 2 winters ago, and most of my friends have either moved to Florida or moved on to whatever comes after this life. Jennifer and Emma were my world, my purpose, my reason for getting up every morning and pretending that Social Security and a part-time job cleaning offices downtown were enough to keep 3 people afloat in one of the most expensive cities in America. But watching that screen, seeing my granddaughter's fear, I felt something inside me shift. Something that had been dormant for years suddenly woke up, stretched its wings, and let out a roar that shook my very foundations. It was rage. Pure, maternal, protective rage that I hadn't felt since Jennifer was small and Tommy Rodriguez had pushed her off the swing set at the playground. I saved the footage, copied it, hid it. Then I went to Emma's room. Marcus was gone by then, probably slithered back to the couch where he pretended to sleep every night. Emma was curled in a ball, facing the wall, her shoulders shaking with silent tears. I sat on the edge of her bed and placed my hand on her back. She flinched. "Emma, sweetheart," I whispered, "we need to talk." She turned to look at me, and in the dim light from the hallway, I saw years of suffering written across her young face. Years of keeping secrets that were too big for an 11-year-old to carry. Years of protecting the adults around her at the expense of her own childhood. "Grandma," she said, her voice barely audible, "I wanted to tell you. I tried to tell Mommy, but she said I was making trouble. She said Marcus helps with money and I shouldn't make him mad. Money. Always money. The root of every compromise, every blind eye turned, every question not asked. In this family, financial survival had become more important than emotional safety, more valuable than protection of innocence. I had allowed it to happen by being too afraid of losing them to demand they respect me, too afraid of being alone to insist on being heard. "Baby girl," I told Emma that night, "you are not making trouble. You are telling the truth, and from now on, I'm going to listen." I didn't sleep Thursday night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that grew cold as I watched the sun rise over Queens. I thought about my life, about the choices that had led me to this moment, choices made out of love, out of fear, out of the desperate need to keep family together no matter the cost. You see, I had been supporting Jennifer financially since Emma was born, not just occasionally, not just in emergencies, but consistently, month after month, year after year. When Jennifer couldn't make rent, I paid it. When Emma needed school supplies, I bought them. When Jennifer's car broke down, I took out a loan I'm still paying off. When Marcus moved in and ate food I had bought with my grocery money, I bought more food. I had been working 3 cleaning jobs until last year when my hip gave out and I had to cut back to 1. 3 cleaning jobs at 72 years old. Scrubbing toilets in Manhattan office buildings so my daughter and granddaughter could have a roof over their heads. My hands are permanently stained from industrial cleaning products, and my knees crack like breaking branches when I stand up too fast. But none of that mattered as long as I could provide for them. Except I wasn't just providing, I was enabling. I was making it possible for Jennifer to ignore red flags, to prioritize her relationship with a man over her daughter's safety, to pass responsibility for difficult decisions onto her elderly mother, who was too tired and too lonely to fight back. The next morning, I called Mrs. Rodriguez from downstairs. Elena Rodriguez had lived in this building longer than anyone, and she had raised 4 children as a single mother before it was socially acceptable to be a single mother. If anyone would understand my situation, it would be Elena. "Mija," she said when I told her what had been happening, "you cannot carry this alone. This is too big for an old woman to handle by herself." Elena made some phone calls. She knew people, knew resources, knew how to navigate systems I had never heard of. By Monday, I had the name of a female lawyer who specialized in family situations and worked on a sliding scale for senior citizens. By Tuesday, I had contacted the school counselor. By Wednesday, I had spoken to Child Protective Services. Each phone call was terrifying. Each conversation felt like stepping off a cliff into unknown territory. But Emma's face kept me going. The memory of her fear, her helplessness, her resignation to suffering because the adults around her were too selfish or too scared to protect her. Jennifer noticed the change in my behavior immediately. "Mom, you're acting weird," she said Thursday evening while I was heating up leftover soup for dinner. We were having soup again because I had spent my grocery money on the camera and couldn't afford anything more substantial until my next Social Security check arrived. "You keep staring at Emma like something's wrong." "Maybe something is wrong," I said, stirring the soup slowly, deliberately. "Maybe we need to talk about what's been happening in this house." Jennifer's face changed. The casual confusion melted away, replaced by something harder, more defensive. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "I'm talking about Marcus. I'm talking about Emma. I'm talking about things that shouldn't be happening under my roof." "Oh, for crying out loud!" Jennifer snapped. "Not this again. Mom, you're paranoid. You see problems that aren't there. Emma is fine. Marcus is good to her. You're just looking for drama because you're bored." Bored. As if wanting to protect my granddaughter from abuse was a hobby I had picked up to pass the time. That night, after Jennifer and Marcus went out to some bar in Astoria, leaving Emma home with me as usual, I sat down with my granddaughter at the kitchen table. I made us both hot chocolate with the expensive cocoa I usually saved for special occasions, and I asked her to tell me everything. It had been going on for 8 months. 8 months of Marcus coming into her room after everyone was asleep. 8 months of him telling her it was their special secret, that it would make Mommy sad if she knew, that it would break up the family if she told anyone. 8 months of a grown man manipulating a child's love for her family into silence about her own abuse. He said if I told, you and Mommy would have to move apart, and you'd be alone. Emma whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. He said I was the only one who could keep our family together by keeping the secret. 8 months. While I was working myself to death to keep a roof over our heads, while I was sacrificing my health and my savings to provide for this family, while I was lying awake at night worrying about money and bills and whether Emma was getting enough to eat, my granddaughter was being violated in the bedroom next to mine. The guilt nearly broke me. How had I not known? How had I not seen? How had I been so focused on financial survival that I missed the emotional destruction happening right under my nose? "Emma," I said, taking her small hands in my weathered ones. "None of this is your fault. None of it. You were trying to protect us, but baby girl, it's not your job to protect the grown-ups. It's our job to protect you." I showed her the camera footage that night. I know some people might think that was wrong, might think I shouldn't have shown an 11-year-old evidence of her own abuse. But Emma needed to see that I believed her, that I had proof, that this wasn't going to be swept under the rug or explained away or ignored. She cried when she saw it. Deep, gut-wrenching sobs that seemed to come from years of held-back pain. I held her while she cried, and I made promises I wasn't sure I could keep, but knew I had to try to keep. "He's never going to touch you again," I promised. "I'm going to make sure of it." Friday morning, I took Emma to school myself, something I hadn't done since she was in kindergarten. I walked her right to the door of her classroom and told her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, that I needed to speak with the school counselor immediately. The school counselor, Ms. Williams, was younger than Jennifer, but had kind eyes and a soft voice that made Emma feel safe. When Emma told her story, with me holding her hand for support, Ms. Williams listened without judgment and took notes without making Emma feel like she was on trial. "We're going to have to report this to Child Protective Services," Ms. Williams explained. "It's required by law. But Emma, you did the right thing by telling your grandmother. You're very brave." Brave. Such a big word for such a small girl who had been carrying such a heavy burden. That afternoon, while Emma was safe at school, I went home to confront my daughter. I had the camera footage copied onto a flash drive, I had the contact information for the lawyer Elena had recommended, and I had something I hadn't possessed in years. Certainty. Absolute, unwavering certainty that I was doing the right thing. Jennifer was in the living room, painting her nails while some daytime talk show played on the television I paid the cable bill for. She looked up when I walked in, and something in my face must have warned her that this wasn't going to be a normal conversation. "Mom, what's wrong? You look upset." "I need you to sit down and listen to me," I said. "And I need you to listen without interrupting." I told her about the camera. I told her about the footage. I told her about Emma's confession and my conversation with the school counselor. I watched the color drain from my daughter's face, watched her carefully painted composure crack and crumble. "That's impossible," she said finally. "Marcus wouldn't do that. Emma must have misunderstood something. Kids don't always understand adult interactions." Adult interactions. As if there were any adult interactions that should be taking place in an 11-year-old's bedroom at midnight. "Jennifer," I said, "I have it on video." That's when she broke. Not with remorse or horror at what had been done to her daughter, but with anger at me for discovering it. "How could you put a camera in Emma's room without telling me?" she screamed. "That's invasion of privacy. That's probably illegal. You had no right." No right. I had no right to protect my granddaughter in my own home that I paid for with money I earned scrubbing other people's toilets. "Where was your right to protect your daughter?" I asked quietly. "I didn't know," Jennifer shouted. "How was I supposed to know?" "Because she tried to tell you. Emma told me she tried to tell you, and you told her she was causing trouble." The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer stood there in our cramped living room, her freshly painted nails gleaming under the fluorescent light, and for the first time in years, she had nothing to say. Marcus came home an hour later, whistling some song and carrying a six-pack of beer he had bought with money that should have gone toward groceries. He stopped whistling when he saw us sitting at the kitchen table, saw the laptop open between us, saw Jennifer's tear-stained face and my granite expression. "What's going on?" he asked, but his voice had lost its casual confidence. "We need to talk," I said. "All of us." I played the video. Marcus watched himself enter Emma's room, watched himself violate a child's trust and safety, watched himself destroy innocence that could never be restored. When it was over, he looked up at me with eyes that showed no remorse, only calculation. "That doesn't prove anything," he said. "You can't see what actually happened. I was just checking on her. She has nightmares sometimes." The audacity took my breath away. Even faced with video evidence, even confronted with the truth, he was still lying, still manipulating, still trying to twist reality to suit his version of events. "Get out," I said. "What?" "Get out of my house. Now. Don't pack. Don't explain. Don't say goodbye to Emma. Just leave." Marcus looked to Jennifer for support, for intervention, for someone to tell me I was overreacting. But Jennifer was staring at her hands, silent and broken, finally understanding the price of her willful blindness. "You can't just kick me out," Marcus said. "I live here. I have rights." Rights. Another man in my life who thought his comfort was more important than a child's safety, who thought his convenience trumped everyone else's well-being. "You have no rights in my home," I said, standing up to my full 5'4" height and looking up at this man who had terrorized my granddaughter. "You have no rights to my space, no rights to my family, and certainly no rights to my granddaughter. Get out before I call the police." He left. Not gracefully, not quietly, but he left. He took his spare key, his beer, his sense of entitlement, and his excuses, and he walked out the door I should have barred months ago. Jennifer didn't speak to me for 3 days. She moved through the apartment like a ghost, making her own meals, avoiding eye contact, communicating only through Emma when absolutely necessary. In the mornings, she would tell Emma to tell me she needed lunch money. In the evenings, she would tell Emma to tell me dinner was ready, as if I had betrayed her by protecting her daughter. On the 4th day, Child Protective Services knocked on our door. The caseworker was a middle-aged Black woman named Sharon, who had probably seen every possible variation of family dysfunction in her career. She was professional but not cold, thorough but not invasive. She interviewed Emma separately, interviewed Jennifer separately, and interviewed me separately. When she finished, she sat us all down in the living room and delivered her assessment. "Emma is going to stay with her grandmother for now," Sharon said. "Jennifer, you'll have supervised visits twice a week while you attend mandatory counseling. We're also going to require that Marcus have no contact with Emma, and if he's found to have violated that order, he'll face criminal charges." Jennifer exploded. "You can't take my daughter away from me. I'm a good mother. I didn't know what was happening." "Not knowing isn't the same as not being responsible," Sharon replied calmly. "A mother's first job is to protect her child. When you were told there might be a problem and chose not to investigate, when you prioritized your relationship with a boyfriend over your daughter's safety, you failed in that responsibility." The truth is a harsh judge, and it had finally arrived in our living room. That night, after Sharon left and after Jennifer stormed out to who knows where, Emma and I sat on my bed and watched an old movie on my laptop. The Princess Bride, one of Emma's favorites, though I suspected she might need some time before she could enjoy stories about princesses again. Are you mad that they said I have to stay with you? Emma asked during the sword fight scene. Mad? Baby girl, I'm relieved. I'm grateful. I'm honored that they trust me to take care of you properly. What about mommy? That was the hardest question. How do you explain to an 11-year-old that her mother's love exists but is compromised by fear, by need, by a lifetime of choosing the easy path over the right path? Mommy loves you, I said carefully. But sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Big mistakes. And they have to learn how to do better before they can be trusted to make good choices again. Emma nodded like she understood, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. No child should have to be wiser than her parent. Over the next few weeks, our routine changed completely. Without Jennifer's drama and Marcus's presence, the apartment felt bigger somehow, even though it was the same cramped space it had always been. Emma started sleeping through the night. She started eating breakfast without being asked. She started talking about school without prompting. I enrolled her in counseling with a therapist who specialized in childhood trauma. Dr. Martinez was expensive, but Elena helped me apply for a grant through a victims assistance program. Emma liked her immediately because Dr. Martinez had a fish tank in her office and let Emma name all the fish during their first session. The money situation became tighter than ever. Without Jennifer's occasional contributions to groceries, without the promise that she would eventually get a better job and start paying rent, I was supporting Emma entirely on my Social Security and my one remaining cleaning job. Some weeks, we ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner. Some months, I paid the electric bill late to afford Emma's therapy sessions. But Emma was safe. Emma was healing. Emma was learning that she deserved protection, that speaking truth wasn't causing trouble, that the adults in her life should be taking care of her instead of the other way around. Jennifer came to her supervised visits sporadically. Sometimes she showed up sober and apologetic, bringing small gifts she couldn't afford and promises she couldn't keep. Sometimes she showed up angry and defensive, demanding to know when she could have Emma back, insisting that she had learned her lesson. Other times, she didn't show up at all. Emma stopped asking where her mother was after the third missed visit. Instead, she started asking if she could invite her friend Sarah over for a sleepover, if we could get library cards, if she could join the school choir. She started asking about the future instead of worrying about the past. 3 months after Marcus left, I got a call from the police. They had arrested him on charges of child endangerment and sexual abuse. Apparently, Emma wasn't his first victim. There was another family, another little girl, another grandmother who had installed a camera and gathered evidence and found the courage to speak up. When I told Emma about the arrest, she didn't cry. She didn't celebrate. She just nodded and went back to her homework like she was closing a book she had never wanted to read in the first place. Are you okay? I asked. I'm okay, Grandma. I'm safe now. Safe. Such a simple word that had required such a complicated journey to achieve. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and thought about the cost of protection. The financial cost was obvious and ongoing. The emotional cost was deeper and more complex. I had lost my relationship with my daughter, at least temporarily. I had disrupted the family dynamic I had spent years maintaining. I had chosen Emma's safety over everyone's comfort, including my own. But as I listened to Emma giggling at something she was watching on her tablet, as I saw her relaxed shoulders and heard her easy breathing, I knew I had made the right choice. Sometimes love requires destruction before it allows rebuilding. Sometimes protection requires confrontation. Sometimes keeping family together means being willing to tear it apart. 6 months after that terrible Friday night when I watched the camera footage, Emma and I had settled into a new normal. She was getting excellent grades, had made new friends, and was talking about wanting to learn piano. I had found a new cleaning job that paid slightly better and had more flexible hours. We were managing. Jennifer had completed her counseling program and was asking for unsupervised visits. Sharon thought it might be appropriate to consider gradual reunification, starting with overnight visits and building up to shared custody. How do you feel about that? Dr. Martinez asked Emma during one of their sessions. I miss Mommy, Emma said, but I don't trust her yet. She chose Marcus over me before. What if she chooses someone else over me again? Out of the mouths of babes. Emma had articulated the heart of the matter with the clarity that only children possess. Trust, once broken, requires more than time to repair. It requires consistent action, demonstrated commitment, and proof that lessons have actually been learned. The day Jennifer came for her first unsupervised visit in 6 months, I watched from my bedroom window as she and Emma walked down our street toward the park. Jennifer was trying too hard, talking too much, overcompensating for months of absence with manic enthusiasm. Emma was polite but guarded, holding herself carefully, like she was protecting something fragile. They came back 2 hours later. Emma went straight to her room to read. Jennifer stood in my kitchen, shifting from foot to foot, clearly wanting to have a conversation she didn't know how to start. She seems good, Jennifer said finally. Different. More confident, maybe. That's what happens when children feel safe, I replied. Jennifer flinched. Mom, I know you think I'm a terrible mother. I think you made terrible choices. There's a difference. I was trying to keep our family together. I was trying to make things work with Marcus because I thought Emma needed a father figure. Emma needed protection more than she needed a father figure. She needed a mother who would listen to her more than she needed a household where everyone pretended to be happy. Jennifer started crying then, the ugly crying of someone who has finally stopped making excuses and started facing reality. I was so afraid of being alone, she sobbed. I was so afraid of raising Emma by myself. I thought if I could just make it work with Marcus, if I could just overlook the problems, we could be a normal family. There's nothing normal about ignoring a child's safety for the sake of avoiding loneliness, I said, but my voice was gentler than it had been in months. And there's nothing wrong with being a single mother. You've been listening to the wrong voices telling you that you need a man to complete your family. We talked for hours that day. Really talked, maybe for the first time in years. I told Jennifer about the years I had spent enabling her dependence, providing financial support without requiring responsibility, choosing peace over difficult conversations. She told me about the years she had spent feeling inadequate, comparing herself to other families, believing she wasn't enough on her own to give Emma a good life. We both cried. We both apologized. But we also both acknowledged that apologies without changed behavior are just words, and words had failed Emma when she needed action most. I want to do better, Jennifer said. I want to be the mother Emma deserves. Then show her, I replied. Don't tell her. Show her. Over the following months, Jennifer did start showing up differently. She got a better job working at a medical office in Manhattan. She found her own apartment in Astoria, small but clean and safe. She attended parenting classes voluntarily, even after her court-ordered counseling was complete. Most importantly, she started listening to Emma. Really listening. When Emma said she didn't like Jennifer's new boyfriend, Jennifer broke up with him instead of dismissing Emma's concerns. When Emma said she wanted to keep living with me for now, Jennifer accepted that decision without guilt-tripping or manipulation. I'm learning that being a good mother sometimes means accepting that someone else might be better at mothering than I am right now, Jennifer told me one afternoon. You've given Emma stability and safety and consistency. I can't compete with that, and I shouldn't try to. I should just try to become worthy of it. Emma started spending weekends with Jennifer, then longer visits during school breaks. But she continued living with me primarily, and we all agreed that was what worked best for everyone involved. The financial strain remained significant. Raising a child on a fixed income in New York City is a daily exercise in creative problem-solving. We shopped at discount stores, used coupons, bought generic brands, and made meals stretch across multiple days. But we also found free activities at the library, free concerts in the park, free museums on community days. Emma learned the value of money in a way that many children don't. She learned to appreciate small luxuries, to take care of her belongings, to understand that choices have consequences and resources have limits. She also learned that financial struggles don't have to mean emotional poverty, that love and safety are more valuable than material abundance. On Emma's 12th birthday, we had a small party in our apartment. Jennifer came, bringing a homemade cake and a gift she had saved for weeks to buy. Elena from downstairs came with her famous empanadas. Dr. Martinez stopped by with a book about strong women in history. Emma blew out her candles and made a wish she didn't share, but I could see contentment in her face that hadn't been there a year ago. After everyone left and we were cleaning up paper plates and plastic cups, Emma hugged me tight. "Thank you, Grandma," she said. "For what, baby girl? For believing me, for protecting me, for showing me what love really looks like." I held her close and breathed in the scent of her shampoo, listened to her steady heartbeat, felt the weight of her trust in my arms. This is what I had been fighting for. This moment, this safety, this knowledge that I had chosen correctly when the choosing was hardest. That night, after Emma went to bed, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and thought about the journey we had all taken. Jennifer was slowly rebuilding her relationship with Emma based on honesty instead of convenience. Emma was healing and growing and learning to speak up for herself. I was learning that love sometimes requires conflict, that protection sometimes demands sacrifice, that doing the right thing isn't always the same as doing the easy thing. I thought about Marcus too, serving time in prison, facing consequences for his actions for probably the first time in his life. I didn't feel triumphant about his imprisonment, but I felt relieved that he couldn't hurt Emma or any other child while he was locked away. I thought about all the families where these conversations never happen, where cameras are never installed, where whispered pleas for help go unheard or unacknowledged. I thought about all the grandmothers who suspect something is wrong but don't trust their instincts, all the mothers who choose denial over difficult truths, all the children who learn to carry secrets that should never be their burden. A year later, Emma started middle school. She was nervous but excited, worried about making friends but confident in her ability to handle challenges. On the first day of school, she hugged me goodbye and said, "If anything bad happens, I'll tell you right away. I promise. And I promise I'll listen and believe you and protect you," I replied. Always. That's the promise that started all of this. The promise that changed our family forever. It's a promise I had been making implicitly for years, but had never been tested until that Friday night when obvious truths could no longer be ignored. As I write this story, Emma is 13 years old and thriving. She plays piano now, just like she wanted to. She's in the school choir and volunteers at the animal shelter on weekends. She still lives with me primarily, though she spends more time with Jennifer as their relationship continues to heal and grow. Jennifer has been dating someone new for several months, but this time she introduced him to Emma gradually, asked for Emma's opinion, and made it clear that Emma's comfort and safety are non-negotiable priorities. This time she's choosing differently. I'm 75 now, and my arthritis makes the cleaning work more difficult each year. But I'm proud of the work I do, proud of the independence it provides, proud that I can still contribute to Emma's care and upbringing. We talk sometimes about what will happen when I can't work anymore, when the physical demands become too much for my aging body. But we talk about it honestly, practically, without fear or shame. Emma talks sometimes about what she wants to be when she grows up. A teacher, maybe, or a counselor, or a lawyer who helps kids. "I want to help other children who have secrets like I did," she says. "I want them to know they can tell the truth and someone will believe them." The ripple effects of trauma can be devastating, but the ripple effects of healing can be transformative. Emma's experience with abuse was horrible and should never have happened. But her experience with recovery, with being believed and protected and valued, is teaching her that she has power, that her voice matters, that she deserves safety and respect. She's learning lessons I wish I had learned at her age, that love doesn't require perfect behavior, that speaking truth isn't causing trouble, that setting boundaries is an act of self-respect rather than selfishness. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't installed that camera, if I hadn't trusted my instincts, if I had continued to prioritize keeping the peace over ensuring Emma's safety. I wonder how much longer the abuse would have continued, how much more damage would have been done, how many years of therapy and healing would have been necessary to undo additional trauma. But I try not to dwell on those what-ifs. Instead, I focus on what actually happened. An elderly woman found the courage to act on her suspicions, a child found the strength to tell her truth, a family learned to prioritize protection over convenience. It wasn't easy. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't what any of us would have chosen if we had been writing our own story. But it was necessary, and it was right, and it led to healing that wouldn't have been possible any other way. They say it takes a village to raise a child, but sometimes it takes just one person to save a child. One person willing to see what others might miss, to hear what others might ignore, to act when action requires sacrifice. I was that person for Emma, but I know there are countless other children who need someone to be that person for them. Children whose whispered pleas go unheard, whose subtle signals are dismissed, whose safety is compromised by adults who prioritize their own comfort over child protection. If you're watching this video, if Emma's story sounds familiar, if you've seen signs that worry you, if you've heard whispers that concern you, I want you to know that it's never too late to speak up. It's never too late to install a camera, ask hard questions, make difficult phone calls, choose child safety over adult convenience. The cost of action might seem high, but the cost of inaction is always higher. The disruption of confronting abuse might seem overwhelming, but the destruction of allowing abuse to continue is always more devastating. Trust your instincts. Believe children when they try to tell you something is wrong. Choose protection over peace. Choose their safety over your comfort. Choose their truth over your denial. And if you're a child watching this video, if someone is hurting you and you don't know who to tell or how to tell them, please know that there are adults who will believe you. There are adults who will protect you. There are adults who will choose your safety over their own convenience. Keep trying to find your voice. Keep looking for your safe person. Keep believing that you deserve protection and respect and safety. Your story doesn't have to end with secrets and suffering. It can end with healing and hope, and the knowledge that you are worth fighting for. Emma's story isn't just about one grandmother who installed a camera and one child who found the courage to speak up. It's about all of us, about our collective responsibility to protect the vulnerable, to listen to the voiceless, to act when action is needed. It's about choosing love that protects over love that enables, choosing difficult truths over comfortable lies, choosing the right thing over the easy thing. Have you ever lived through something like this? Have you ever had to make the choice between keeping peace and ensuring safety? Have you ever been the child who needed someone to believe them, or the adult who had to find courage they didn't know they possessed? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their own courage, their own voice, their own strength to act. And if this video helped you in any way, if Emma's story resonated with your own experience, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps me continue sharing stories that need to be told, truths that need to be heard, lessons that need to be learned. Together, we can create a world where children's whispers are heard, where their pleas for help are answered, where their safety is valued above all else. Together, we can make sure that "he'll never stop" becomes "he's been stopped," and that every child has at least one adult willing to be their protector, their voice, their courage when they need it most. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being the kind of person who would watch a video like this, because you understand that protecting children isn't just someone else's responsibility. It's all of our responsibility. Emma is safe now. She's thriving now. She's learning now that her voice matters, that her safety matters, that she matters. That's the ending every child deserves. That's the story we all need to help write. But Emma's story doesn't end there, because healing isn't a destination. It's a journey that continues every single day. And today, I want to tell you about the lessons we learned in the months and years that followed, because those lessons might be the difference between someone else's child suffering in silence or finding their voice. Emma's 14th birthday was different from any birthday we'd celebrated before. For the first time in her life, she was the one making decisions about her own celebration. She chose to have a small gathering at our apartment, but she also chose the guest list, the cake flavor, even the decorations. Such small choices. But for a child who had spent years having her autonomy stripped away, these decisions were profound acts of self-determination. I remember watching her that day, seeing how confidently she moved through the space, how easily she laughed with her friends, how naturally she accepted compliments and affection. This was not the same frightened child who had whispered, "He'll never stop," in the darkness 2 years earlier. This was a young woman who had discovered her own strength, her own worth, her own voice. Jennifer had been doing well in her recovery journey. She had maintained her own apartment for over a year, had kept her job at the medical office, and had been consistent with her visits and her support payments. More importantly, she had learned to listen, really listen. When Emma spoke, Jennifer put down her phone, made eye contact, and responded to what Emma was actually saying rather than what Jennifer wanted to hear. The hardest part, Jennifer told me during one of our monthly coffee meetings, was accepting that I had failed her as a mother. Not just failed to protect her from Marcus, but failed to create an environment where she felt safe telling me about problems. I had to accept that my own neediness, my own fear of being alone, had created a situation where my daughter felt responsible for managing my emotions, instead of the other way around. These coffee meetings had become a ritual for us, a neutral space where we could talk honestly about Emma's well-being without the child having to mediate between the adults in her life. Sometimes these conversations were difficult. Sometimes Jennifer would get defensive or I would get judgmental. But we had both committed to working through the discomfort for Emma's sake. I see her confidence now, Jennifer continued, stirring her coffee slowly. I see how she speaks up when she doesn't like something, how she asks questions instead of just accepting what adults tell her. I'm proud of that, even though it means I can't get away with being lazy about parenting anymore. That was progress. Real progress. Jennifer was learning that good parenting isn't about having a compliant child who never causes problems. Good parenting is about raising a child who has the confidence to speak up when problems arise, who trusts that the adults in their life will respond appropriately to their concerns. But even with all this progress, there were still challenges. Emma had nightmares sometimes, sudden panic attacks triggered by seemingly innocent triggers, a door closing too loudly in the hallway, a male voice speaking too softly behind her, the scent of the cologne Marcus used to wear detected on a stranger at the grocery store. Dr. Martinez had warned us that healing from trauma isn't linear. You'll have good days and difficult days, she had explained to Emma. The difficult days don't mean you're not healing. They just mean you're human, and your brain is still processing something very difficult that shouldn't have happened to you. Emma had developed her own strategies for managing these moments. She would excuse herself to the bathroom, splash cold water on her face, and repeat the mantra Dr. Martinez had taught her. I am safe now. I am in control now. I am believed now. When she came back, she rarely needed to explain what had happened. I would just squeeze her hand or touch her shoulder gently, letting her know I understood. and was there if she needed me. These moments became less frequent over time, but they never disappeared completely. Emma learned to see them as part of her story rather than something to be ashamed of. "My brain is just being extra careful," she would say when friends noticed her sudden mood changes. "It's trying to protect me, even when I don't need protecting." The financial challenges continued to be significant, but we had learned to be creative. Emma got a part-time job at the local library when she turned 15, reshelving books and helping with children's programs. The work suited her perfectly. She loved books, she was patient with children, and she felt proud contributing to our household expenses. "I don't want you to work," I told her when she first brought up the idea. "You should be focused on school and being a teenager." "Grandma," she said, giving me that look that reminded me so much of my own mother, "I've never been able to just be a teenager. I've always been worried about money and family problems and adult stuff. At least this way, I can worry about something I have control over." She had a point. Emma had been forced to grow up too quickly in many ways, and while I couldn't give her back her innocence, I could help her channel her maturity into positive experiences. The library job became a source of independence and self-esteem for her, and the extra money helped ease some of the pressure on our tight budget. Around this time, Emma also started attending a support group for survivors of childhood abuse. Dr. Martinez had suggested it, but Emma had been resistant at first. "I don't want to sit around talking about bad things that happened to me," she had said. "I want to move forward, not backward." "Sweetie," I replied, "sometimes moving forward means acknowledging where you've been and connecting with other people who understand your journey." The first few meetings were difficult for Emma. She came home quiet and thoughtful, processing what she had heard from other survivors. But gradually, she began to see the value in connecting with peers who truly understood her experience. "There's this girl, Michelle," Emma told me after her 6th meeting. "She's 17, and she went through something similar when she was my age. But now she's planning to go to college to study social work, and she talks about her experience like it made her stronger instead of just damaged." Michelle became a mentor figure for Emma, someone who could offer perspective that neither I nor Dr. Martinez could provide. The perspective of someone who had walked this exact path and emerged on the other side with hope and purpose intact. Emma started talking more seriously about her future during this time. The conversations weren't abstract anymore. They were concrete plans based on real interests and genuine passion. "I want to work with kids," she told me one evening while we were making dinner together. "But not just helping kids who've been hurt. I want to work on prevention. I want to teach kids about boundaries and consent, and how to recognize when adults are asking them to keep inappropriate secrets." I felt my chest swell with pride listening to her talk. This child who had been silenced by abuse was planning to dedicate her life to helping other children find their voices. The transformation was remarkable, but it hadn't happened overnight. It was the result of thousands of small moments of healing, thousands of conversations about worth and safety, and the right to be protected. Jennifer's relationship with Emma continued to improve during this period, but it was a different relationship than either of them had expected to have. Jennifer couldn't reclaim the role of primary parent. That ship had sailed when she chose denial over protection. But she could be a supportive adult in Emma's life, someone who offered love and encouragement without trying to override my authority as Emma's primary caregiver. "I'm not trying to be her mother anymore," Jennifer explained to me during one of our coffee meetings. "I'm trying to be her mom, if that makes sense. Someone who loves her and supports her but understands that you're the one providing the stability and structure she needs." It did make sense. Jennifer had learned to love Emma without trying to possess her, to support Emma without trying to control her. It was a more mature kind of love than Jennifer had been capable of during Emma's early years, and while it couldn't undo the damage that had been done, it could contribute to the healing that was ongoing. The legal aspects of our situation finally concluded when Emma was 15. Marcus pleaded guilty to multiple charges related to child abuse and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Emma chose not to provide a victim impact statement at his sentencing, but she did write a letter to the other families who had been affected by his crimes. "I want them to know it wasn't their fault," she explained to me when I asked why she had chosen to reach out. "I want them to know that speaking up was the right thing to do, even though it was scary. I want them to know that healing is possible." The letter was beautiful, mature, and compassionate, while still acknowledging the real pain and damage that Marcus had caused. Emma showed it to me before sending it, and I was struck by how she had managed to write about her experience without minimizing its impact or drowning in bitterness. "How do you feel about him being sentenced?" I asked her after we received notification that the legal proceedings had concluded. "I feel nothing about him," Emma replied matter-of-factly. "He took enough of my energy when I was little. I'm not going to give him any more of it now that I'm older." That response encapsulated something important about Emma's healing journey. She hadn't forgiven Marcus, Forgiveness wasn't necessary for her well-being. She hadn't forgotten what he had done. The memories were part of her story. But she had learned to separate his actions from her sense of self-worth, to understand that his choices were about his brokenness rather than her inadequacy. Emma's 16th birthday was a milestone none of us had been sure we would reach. Not because we doubted she would survive. By then, her resilience was obvious to everyone who knew her. But because achieving the kind of stability and healing that would allow for normal teenage celebrations had seemed impossible during those dark months when she was 11 years old. Emma chose to have a sweet 16 party at the community center in our neighborhood. Jennifer helped plan it, Elena from downstairs helped with decorations, and Dr. Martinez even stopped by to wish Emma well. But the highlight of the evening for me was watching Emma give a short speech thanking everyone for their support. 2 years ago, she said, her voice clear and strong, I didn't think I would ever feel safe enough to have a party. I didn't think I would ever trust enough people to fill up a room. But here we are, and I'm surrounded by people who have shown me what real love looks like. Real love protects. Real love listens. Real love chooses what's right over what's easy. She looked directly at me when she said that last part, and I had to step outside for a moment to compose myself. This young woman who had whispered, "He'll never stop," in the darkness when she was just 11 years old, was now speaking publicly about love and protection and the courage required to choose correctly when choices are difficult. After the party, Emma and I sat on the fire escape outside our apartment, looking out over the lights of Queens and talking about her plans for junior year of high school. I've been thinking about colleges, she said. Dr. Martinez says I should start visiting campuses and thinking about what I want to study. What are you thinking about studying? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Social work, probably. Or maybe law, focused on family court and children's advocacy. I want to be the person who listens when kids try to tell adults that something is wrong. I want to be the person who believes them and knows how to help them. I squeezed her hand. You would be excellent at that. You understand what those children are going through in a way that most adults can't. Yeah, she said. But I also understand what you went through. How hard it was to make the choice to protect me even when it meant disrupting everything. How scary it must have been to install that camera and confront Mom and kick Marcus out. I want to help other grandmothers and aunts and teachers find that courage too. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the city settling into evening around us. Police sirens in the distance, a neighbor's television playing too loudly, children laughing in the playground across the street. Grandma, Emma said eventually, do you ever regret it? Any of it? The camera, the confrontation, taking custody of me? Do you ever wish you had just minded your own business? It was a question I had asked myself many times over the years, especially during the most difficult financial periods, the most exhausting legal proceedings, the most challenging therapy sessions. Do I regret choosing Emma's safety over my own comfort? Do I regret disrupting our family dynamic to protect one member of it? Do I regret the cost, financial, emotional, relational, of doing the right thing? Never, I told her, and I meant it completely. Not for one single second. You are worth every difficult conversation, every sleepless night, every dollar I spent on cameras and lawyers and therapy sessions. You are worth everything, Emma. You always were. She leaned against my shoulder, and we watched the city lights twinkle in the darkness. 2 survivors, 2 fighters, 2 people who had learned that love sometimes requires courage, that protection sometimes demands sacrifice, that doing the right thing is rarely the same as doing the easy thing. Emma graduated from high school with honors and a full scholarship to a state university where she planned to double major in social work and criminal justice. At her graduation party, she gave another speech. This one focused on the adults who had supported her journey toward healing and success. My grandmother Dorothy, she said, looking directly at me, taught me that speaking up for yourself isn't causing trouble, it's taking responsibility for your own well-being. She taught me that adults who really love you will choose your safety over their own convenience, every single time. She taught me that being believed is a gift, but it's a gift that every child deserves to receive. Jennifer was in the audience that day too, crying with pride and grief in equal measure. Pride for the remarkable young woman Emma had become, grief for the years of Emma's childhood that could never be recovered or repeated. After the ceremony, Jennifer pulled me aside. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you for saving her when I couldn't. Thank you for believing her when I wouldn't. Thank you for choosing her over me when she needed choosing. I didn't choose her over you, I replied. I chose safety over denial, protection over comfort, truth over convenience. I hoped someday you would make the same choices. I'm trying to, Jennifer said. Every day I'm trying to. And she was. Jennifer had maintained her sobriety, her job, her apartment, and her commitment to being a positive presence in Emma's life, without trying to reclaim a role she had forfeited through her earlier choices. She had learned to love Emma without trying to possess her, to support Emma without trying to control her. Emma left for college a few weeks after graduation, and the apartment felt enormous with just me in it. The silence that had once been filled with Marcus's unwelcome presence, Jennifer's drama, and Emma's nightmares was now filled with peace. But it was also filled with loneliness. Emma called me every Sunday evening, updating me on her classes, her friends, her growing involvement with the campus sexual assault prevention program. She was thriving in college, making friends easily, and excelling in her studies. The confidence that had begun to develop in therapy was now blooming into full-fledged leadership. I got elected to be a peer counselor for the freshman dorms, she told me during one of our Sunday calls. The students vote on who they want to be available for crisis support, and apparently, my classmates trust me to be that person. Of course they did. Emma had learned through her own experience how to listen without judgment, how to believe without question, how to support without trying to fix everything immediately. She understood that being heard is often more important than being advised, that being believed is often more healing than being rescued. During her sophomore year, Emma started dating a young man named David, who was studying to be a teacher. When she brought him home for Thanksgiving, I watched carefully how he interacted with her. Did he respect her boundaries? Did he listen when she spoke? Did he support her opinions even when they differed from his own? "You're scrutinizing him pretty intensely," Emma whispered to me, while David was helping with dishes after dinner. "I'm evaluating," I replied. "There's a difference." He laughed. "And what's your evaluation? He looks at you like you hung the moon, but he also steps back when you want to handle something yourself. He listens when you talk without waiting for his turn to speak. He asks questions about your opinions rather than trying to change them. I approve." "Good," Emma said, "because I wasn't asking for permission, but I was hoping for your blessing." David became a regular presence in our lives over the following years. He treated me with respect and affection, never trying to compete with my role in Emma's life or minimize the significance of our relationship. He understood that Emma's history had shaped her in ways that required patience and understanding, and he was committed to being worthy of her trust. Emma graduated summa cum laude with her double major and was accepted to graduate school to pursue a master's degree in social work with a specialization in trauma therapy for children and families. At her undergraduate graduation, I sat in the audience with Jennifer, Elena from downstairs, Dr. Martinez, and David, all of us beaming with pride as Emma walked across the stage. "Look what you did," Jennifer whispered to me as we watched Emma accept her diploma. "Look what you made possible." "Look what she did," I replied. "Look what she made of the safety we finally provided her." That night, at Emma's graduation party, she gave another speech. But this time, she talked not just about gratitude, but about responsibility. The responsibility we all have to protect children, to believe children, to create environments where children feel safe speaking truth about their experiences. "My story began with secrets and fear," she said, "but it continued with courage and truth, and adults who were willing to prioritize my safety over their own comfort. Every child deserves that kind of protection. Every child deserves to be believed. Every child deserves to have at least one adult in their life who will choose what's right over what's easy." She paused and looked directly at me. "My grandmother taught me that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. A choice to act on someone else's behalf even when that action requires sacrifice. A choice to believe even when believing is inconvenient. A choice to protect even when protection disrupts everything else." Emma's master's thesis focused on the role of non-parental caregivers in protecting children from abuse. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, family friends who notice warning signs and find the courage to act on their suspicions. She interviewed dozens of families where protective intervention had made the difference between continued abuse and safety. "The common factor," she explained to me over dinner one evening, "isn't that these adults were particularly brave or strong or prepared. The common factor is that they decided the child's safety was more important than everyone's comfort. They chose disruption over denial." Emma has been working as a child trauma therapist for 3 years now, and she recently started her own practice focusing specifically on family reunification after protective intervention. She helps children, parents, and extended family members navigate the complex process of rebuilding relationships after abuse has been disclosed and addressed. "The goal isn't always to put families back together the way they were," she explains. "The goal is to create new family structures that prioritize safety while still preserving loving relationships where possible." Emma's work is difficult and emotionally demanding, but it's also deeply fulfilling. She often tells me about cases where her interventions have made the difference between a child remaining in an unsafe situation and a child receiving the protection they need. Last month, Emma called me with news that made my heart nearly burst with pride. She had been invited to speak at a national conference on child abuse prevention, sharing her story and her professional insights with social workers, therapists, and legal advocates from across the country. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "Talking about my experience in front of hundreds of professionals feels overwhelming." "You've been talking about your experience for years," I reminded her. "You've helped other children find their voices, other caregivers find their courage, other families find their way to healing. This is just a bigger audience for the same important message." Emma's conference presentation was titled, "From Whispers to Voices: How One Grandmother's Courage Changed Everything." She began by playing an audio recording of her own voice at age 11, reading a poem she had written about feeling scared and unheard. Then she played a recording of her voice at 24, confidently discussing trauma-informed care techniques with a colleague. "The difference between these two recordings," she told the audience, "isn't just age or education or therapy, though all of those things mattered. The difference is that someone believed the first voice enough to act on what she was trying to say." She went on to share our story in detail, discussing the warning signs I had noticed, the camera I had installed, the confrontations I had initiated, and the long-term commitment to Emma's healing that had followed. But she also discussed the broader implications of our experience. How many children are whispering right now, hoping someone will hear them? How many adults are noticing concerning signs but talking themselves out of acting on their instincts? How many families are prioritizing comfort over safety because disruption feels too overwhelming? Emma's presentation received a standing ovation, and she was approached afterward by dozens of conference attendees wanting to learn more about her work and her perspective. Several organizations offered her consulting opportunities, and 3 universities invited her to consider teaching positions. "I think I want to do it," she told me over dinner the week after the conference. "I want to teach other social workers and therapists how to recognize and respond to child abuse. I want to train them to see signs that might be overlooked, to ask questions that might be uncomfortable, to act on suspicions even when action requires disruption." Emma is now 30 years old, married to David, and teaching graduate courses in child protection while maintaining her therapy practice. They live in a beautiful apartment in Brooklyn, and Emma visits me every Sunday for dinner, just like she did when she was in high school and college. Jennifer remains a presence in Emma's life, though their relationship continues to be one of mutual affection rather than dependent attachment. Jennifer learned to love Emma without trying to possess her, to support Emma without trying to control her. She remarried 2 years ago to a man who treats her with respect and kindness, and who understands that Emma's well-being is a non-negotiable priority in any family configuration. "I'm grateful for the relationship I have with Emma now," Jennifer told me recently. "It's not the relationship I thought I wanted when she was little, but it's the relationship we both needed. I can love her without feeling like I have to be responsible for managing her life, and she can love me without feeling like she has to manage my emotions." Emma and David are expecting their first child this fall, a daughter they plan to name Dorothy after me. When Emma told me about the pregnancy and her choice of names, I cried harder than I had since the night I first watched that camera footage all those years ago. "I want her to know about her namesake," Emma said, rubbing her growing belly. "I want her to know that her great-grandmother was the kind of person who chose protection over peace, truth over comfort, action over denial. I want her to grow up knowing that she has that same courage in her blood." Emma has already started preparing for motherhood, with the same thoughtfulness and determination she brought to her healing and her career. She and David have taken parenting classes, read extensively about child development and trauma prevention, and created detailed safety protocols for their home and their daughter's care. "I know what signs to watch for," Emma explains. "I know what questions to ask. I know how to create an environment where my daughter will feel safe telling me if anyone ever makes her uncomfortable. But most importantly, I know that being a protective parent means being willing to believe your child even when believing is inconvenient, acting on their behalf even when action is disruptive. This is Emma's greatest gift to her unborn daughter, not just the knowledge of how to avoid danger, but the absolute certainty that she will be believed and protected if danger ever finds her anyway." As I write this, Emma is 8 months pregnant and glowing with anticipation. She is healthy, successful, happily married, and about to become a mother. She has friends who value her wisdom and colleagues who respect her expertise. She has a family that functions based on love and respect rather than denial and convenience. None of this was inevitable. If I had not installed that camera, if I had not confronted Jennifer and Marcus, if I had chosen comfort over protection, Emma's story could have ended very differently. She could have spent years in silence, decades in therapy, a lifetime wondering if anyone had ever loved her enough to fight for her safety. But that's not how Emma's story ended, because sometimes one person's courage is enough to change everything. Sometimes one adult's willingness to act on uncomfortable suspicions is enough to save a child. Sometimes choosing the right thing over the easy thing is enough to transform a family. Emma's story is my story too. It's the story of an elderly woman who learned that love sometimes requires conflict, that protection sometimes demands sacrifice, that doing the right thing is rarely the same as doing the convenient thing. It's the story of a grandmother who chose her granddaughter's safety over her own comfort and discovered that the cost of protection, while significant, is always less than the cost of allowing harm to continue. But Emma's story is also your story. If you're the adult who notices something concerning about a child in your life, if you're the person who wonders if you should speak up, if you should ask questions, if you should act on your suspicions, if you're the one who has to choose between keeping peace and ensuring safety, Emma's story is proof that children can heal from trauma when they receive appropriate support. It's proof that families can rebuild after protective intervention. It's proof that speaking up for a child's safety is always the right choice, even when it's the difficult choice. Most importantly, Emma's story is proof that he'll never stop can become he's been stopped when one adult finds the courage to believe a child and act on that belief. Your voice matters, your suspicions matter, your willingness to act matters. Somewhere there's a child who needs you to be brave enough to see what others might miss, to hear what others might ignore, to act when action requires sacrifice. Be that person. Be Dorothy. Be the adult who chooses protection over comfort, truth over denial, action over inaction. Be the person who helps transform a whispered "he'll never stop" into a confident declaration that I am safe now, I am believed now, I am protected now. That's the ending every child deserves. That's the story we all need to help write.